Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Thanks for tuning in to Harvesting Happiness today for a healthy serving of consciously prepared brain food. This is Lisa Cypers-Kamen, your host. For more than 13 years, I've been handcrafting these sound ideas for better well-being. Each week, I love spotlighting diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. I invite you to listen up and change the way you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Alrighty then, let's dive in. This episode offers psychosocial education designed to inspire and motivate our listeners. The information provided does not constitute a therapeutic relationship nor a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 911, go to your nearest emergency room, or for listeners in the United States, text 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about grit, grace, and the power tools of courage. My guest today is Bishop Mariann Edgar Buddy. She is the author of How We Learn to Be Brave, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. Bishop Buddy is the bishop and spiritual leader of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, D.C. and the Washington National Cathedral. Prior to her election in 2011, she was a parish priest in Minneapolis for 18 years. Bishop Buddy has appeared on the PBS NewsHour, Meet the Press, Good Morning America, and The Today Show, among others. Mariann has also earned her Master's in Divinity and Doctor of Ministry from Virginia Theological Seminary. And I am delighted to have you with me today, Mariann. I'm really excited to talk about this subject.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you as well, Lisa. I'm grateful for the invitation.
Me too. Let's talk about your inspiration to write the book, How We Learn to Be Brave.
Well, inspiration is such a mystery in its inception, its follow through. It has a lot to do with what you said at the beginning about grit and grace. The catalytic event was one of those relatively rare moments when my life kind of goes into a spotlight, when people other than those in my immediate world are aware of my work. And that was when I took a public statement in opposition to our former president when he used one of our churches as a backdrop in the midst of the real tumultuous events of June of 2020 after George Floyd's murder. And that in that moment, there was a fair amount of conversation about the bravery or the courage that was required in that action, which at the time, frankly, didn't feel like courage to me. And we can talk about that later if you like. But what precipitated the writing was when people asked me to reflect on that, I realized that my understanding of courage is so much deeper than moments of notoriety, if you will, or of public awareness, and has far more to do with the day-to-day living that sets a direction for a given life, and those decisive moments, most of which are unknown to anyone except ourselves and a small group of people, that those are the things that really make for a courageous life, or those are the moments that teach us how courage evolves. And that's what inspired me. And then the book took on its own life as I reflected on those themes in a deeper way.
And how would you describe the knowing that is required to help with the deciding, as you call it, to go, to say, to stay, to start, to stop, whatnot?
Right. Well, I think there's in my experience, and I also draw upon the life stories of all manner of people, from historical figures to people that I admire now, to characters in literature. And there seems to be an inner prompting or an inner energy that is on some level unanswerable until it doesn't go away until we tend to it. And that inner prompting, and it can have it can be caused by external events, but something happens inside us that builds to an awareness that we have a decision to make. And it can be large or small, it can be public or private, it can have, you know, consequences that span decades, or it can be something immediate in the moment. But there's this awareness that we have come to a moment of choice. And so I try to, I mean, I don't know how to answer where that comes from. That has, that's just the stuff of mystery. But I do think we all know what it feels like to reach a point where we are summoned by life, by our circumstances, by some spiritual force that is beyond any adequate naming, that calls us into a space where we have to move or do something or act in some way that calls us beyond our, to use the phrase, our comfort zone now. It usually calls us to some place of risk or of unknowing that starts us on a path, and we follow it. And so that's what I try to give language to, what those experiences can feel like over the course of a life.
What I'm hearing from what you're describing is almost like the needle of the internal compass has like a little spark, like it gets a little electrical jolt that it has to somehow move direction in some way. And you can't describe where that electrical impulse is coming from, but it is. It's just something that happens.
Right. Now, in fairness, in our consciousness, much of that is happening in response to our lives and our life circumstances, right? Things happen, things change, something presents itself, an opportunity presents itself, an opportunity is denied us. There is something that requires a response in some way. So I think that's one whole category of how that spark gets lit. And then there are the other ones that are more internal, and there's a developmental aspect to that as well, that certain sparks within us are lit at certain stages of our lives, and that it's as mysterious as how a child learns to walk, right? If you've ever been around a child who is learning to walk, you can tell that there is something internal happening that is motivating that child to move from a crawl or a holding on to a ledge to taking those first steps alone. And for me, that's one of the most powerful images of what it feels like, because you can see on a child's face that she or he knows exactly what's happening, right? There is something really big happening right now. And usually at that point of awareness is when they tumble over and fall on their hopefully well-padded bottom. But you know what I'm saying, that there's this sense of inner drive that comes as a result of the circumstances or the place in life that calls those to mind, calls those moments to our fore, right?
Going back to your catalyst, I want to just reflect upon you sort of stepping into public truth about, in a brave way, about what you believe to be true. And how that, whether you agree or disagree, one disagrees, it doesn't matter, but the respect that we must pay to ourselves and each other when we have the gumption, when we have that grit and that grace to walk into that light of truth.
Right. In part, it was a response to the fact of I'm a person, and my job is as the spiritual leader of 86 Episcopal churches in the Washington, D.C. area. And one of them is directly situated across from the White House.
Yep.
And so in part, the response was because some momentous things were happening right on the grounds of a church under my care. And And in some ways, when the events unfolded the way they did, some response was required. And I knew, even though I was sitting in my living room with my mother, who had just come into our home because of the COVID pandemic, right? I had to move her into our house, and we were sitting on the couch watching television, and these events were happening in real time. I knew that I knew because I knew, and I knew because people were contacting me, asking me not for my response, right? There was this summons, both internally and externally, that said, we need, you need to respond to this, right? And there wasn't a lot of time, right? So there wasn't a lot of time to think. And I spent some time in the writing, Lisa, dwelling on those moments when we don't have a lot of time to think. That life is, we just don't have time,
Yep.
right? And so for good or for ill, we may regret it later, but we are called upon to act. And I use the metaphor of baseball, like when it's a baseball player's turn at bat. It doesn't really matter how the player feels about that. It doesn't, nothing. It's his turn, her turn, and there you are, and you step up and you swing, right? So it's that kind of, so you're almost going on muscle memory and on instinct or intuition more than on conscious thought. And those moments are relatively rare, but when they happen, boy, do we know it. And people often talk about being on autopilot, right? Or like they describe what happened almost as if they were in a dream sequence, right? There was just all these things happening, and then you fill in the blank. I put my foot on the brake, or I jumped in the water, or I leapt from my, from, right? There's
Yes.
these things that happen, and people say, how do you do that? And on one level you say, well, I have no idea. And on another, when you look back, you can say, well, actually, there were a number of reasons why. There are a number of things I can point to say, yeah, that's kind of how that happened, because of all of these things that were true. And so in my instance, in that case, it was a moment of, I was the person in the position that had the ability to say something. And the question was I going to say something, or was I going to let it pass? And I made the decision that one of our churches and the sacred texts of our tradition could not be used in the way that the former president chose to use them without evoking some response on our part, right? It was in my, again, I understand people might disagree, but in my sense, it was a violation of it was taking on and assuming the mantle of our tradition to justify a political position. And I had to say, no, that's not what that's for. And also there was a lot of suffering happening in that moment.
Yes.
And we wanted to be known to being on the side of compassion and solidarity. So that was that. And so if you want to ask me more about that, that's fine. But that's kind of how that came down.
Well, and what's coming to mind as you're describing that moment in time is, the world was watching. It wasn't just your group of churches, the 86,
right.
Churches that
mm-hmm.
you were the steward, caretaker, overseer, safeguard for. It was the world was watching this unfold, and somebody had to be the adult and stand up for what was right.
Right.
And that was you. That was your moment.
And you know how rare that is, right?
Yes.
I mean, how many times do any of us step into that space, do what's right, and absolutely no one is watching, right?
Yeah.
It's not. And so if on some level, if the motivation is to have the world watch, we become very desperate people looking for the limelight. So that's not the point at all. And one of the things that I think anyone has to learn who has any public life at all is that what matters most in our work is integrity over days of no drama, right? When we can still be counted on to show up and do what's right, even when no one's watching, right? When the microphones go away, when the cameras are gone, are you still going to be there? Are you still going to be in the cause, working for the cause that moment represents? And that's a larger issue for us in a culture that is accustomed to moments that can be curated on video or through social media.
Well, it was the flip side of the same coin. Your response to the attention-seeking behaviors was the medicine.
Right.
For us, for the average person.
For many.
Yes, for many. We need to take a break. When we come back, we will continue the conversation with my guest today, Bishop Mariann Edgar Budde. We're talking about her book, How We Learn to Be Brave, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. To learn more, please go to edow.org. Under the About section, you can look up Bishop Mariann. To find her on Twitter, go to @me, BUDDE, @me_Budde. On Facebook, Bishop Mariann Budde. And on Instagram, Mariann Budde. Here comes the pause. We'll be right back. And that actually is a promise. Just a minute here. Before we take that break, I want to remind everyone about the importance of personal growth. And growth is a very good thing, especially when it promotes good hair days that always lead to happier days. And one of the ways I continue to grow is with Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement that's clinically shown to improve visible thickness and strength. Did you know that nearly 50% of all women are or will be impacted by weakened or thinning hair? If you're among them like me, you're not alone, and there is a solution that you can trust to deliver great results. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting the root causes of thinning from within, like stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism, all through whole body health. In a clinical study, 86% of women experienced improved growth after 6 months of using Nutrafol women's hair growth supplements. Nutrafol has multiple formulas, including vegan. Each physician-formulated product is made with natural, drug-free, medical-grade ingredients in consistent doses for reliable results that I have experienced firsthand. What I love most about Nutrafol's whole-body approach to health is that in addition to thicker and stronger hair, the ingredients have stopped excessive shedding while helping to improve my sleep, stress response, and those pesky menopause symptoms, including hot flashes. No matter your lifestyle or stage of life, Nutrafol is here to help you keep growing by improving your whole body health. Visit Nutrafol.com and take their hair wellness quiz for a personalized plan that targets better hair growth through a whole body health approach. Join me and millions of others who are committed to keep growing with Nutrafol. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code HARVESTING. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code HARVESTING. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code HARVESTING. Now let's take that pause. Each day we have the intellectual freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable, regardless of external circumstance. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, seek support because good psychological health is vital in the achievement of a happy and satisfying life. Visit harvestinghappiness.com for psychosocial educational resources to boost emotional and social intelligence. Like what you hear on Harvesting Happiness? Sharing is caring. Pay it forward by spreading the word to your community and through social media. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes from wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. And we're back, continuing the conversation with Bishop Mariann Edgar Budde. We're talking about grit, grace, and the power tools of courage. Let's get back to it. So, Bishop Mariann, let's talk a little bit for the average human when they reach those decisive moments in life, deciding to go, stay, and to start. What words of encouragement would you give us?
One of the things that I think is so interesting for any of us to do is to look back on our lives, no matter how old we are, and to think about the turning points or the anchor events around which the narrative of our life can be told, right? And often we will come to, or we'll start our story with events that had some kind of catalytic power. And at the center of that event was a decision that we made, even if that decision was in response to something beyond our control. And so, for example, as you said just now, one of the more decisive moments in every human being's life are those time or is the time, and there's usually many over the course of decades, when we come to the realization that it is time for us to leave where we are, physical, spiritual, relational, and go somewhere else. And it's a very clear sense that we are called to let go of something that is defining to us, be it a geographic location, employment, relationship, and move towards something else. Typically, that we can only see on the borders of our horizon. We're not 100% sure where the destination lay. And that's certainly true in all the great spiritual traditions have at their core some kind of journey that our forebears were summoned to take. It's also the stuff of every great novel, every great movie, coming of age stories, the heroic path as laid out in mythology and in some of the great sagas of humankind. And so I like to think of that as probably the archetype or the one that comes to mind most readily for us. And how does that happen? So that's one really big one, very developmentally appropriate as we emerge from adolescence into adulthood, but it can happen several times across a lifetime. There's always loss involved. There's always a rearranging of social relationships and a formation of new community. So that's one. On the other end of the spectrum is the same sense of decision and sense of urgency around decision, but the decision is the exact opposite, and that is in response to all kinds of impulses that might be encouraging us to go. We actually sense that the true call is to stay where we are and go deeper, to persevere in relationship, to find our identity and new sense of call and life right where we are in the neighborhoods we're in rather than the ones we are drawn to. Do you hear what I'm saying? That sense of like, I'm going to stick
Yes.
this out. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay here. Similarly, there is that sense that all of us have had in one form or another when we realize that we see a goal in the distant horizon and we feel called to start moving toward it with full awareness that getting from where we are to what that goal is going to take a very long time and require lots of steps along the way. The more obvious being when any of us decide to undertake a long course of study that will lead to a profession, say. And I write of one woman who, as a young mother of three, decided that she was going to at last pursue her dream of becoming a nurse. But that meant for her going back to remedial courses in college at night for 4 or 5 years while her kids were in school, then enrolling in nursing school, then getting her first job. Do you hear what I'm saying? It's like it took her a decade
Yep.
to reach that goal. But at one moment when she was caring for her third child, the dream came to her with such force that she knew she was going to start walking toward it. So those are three of I think there are 7 that I write of in the book, but just to get a sense of the universality of them.
But the thread line or the through line is, I'm thinking of Joseph Campbell's work and the call to adventure, right? The
Yes.
catalyst for this being called to answer the call, go through the threshold into the unknown, to embark on this journey that will have its ups and downs and adventures. It's required for the development of the story or for us as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're wired for this
Yeah.
in some very real way, and there are occasions, tragically, when those journeys are thwarted by circumstances beyond our control. There are lives that feel no sense of urgency around that because of the way, and those just seem to me like this the real one of the greatest tragedies of a human life is when people aren't able to experience that because it is so innate to us. On the other hand, I write a chapter on accepting accepting things that we would never choose, and through accepting them, help make them part of our destiny, right? So that is in some ways to say life throws us curveballs all the time, and crises and tragedies happen all around us, and sometimes they happen to us. And what do we do in response to them? And we can find great courage, meaning, purpose, and life transformation when we accept the things that we would never choose, and then use that as raw material for something, to create something of our lives of true beauty and meaning for other people. And it's a hard choice, and we wouldn't wish it on anyone that we love, but it's also inspiring to see how that can unfold in other people, and also certainly for ourselves.
And that is bravery when
It's
we're able to
huge.
do that. Huge bravery. That's
Huge.
extraordinary bravery, actually, I think.
It is, and and it can be so empowering in the sense that it it allows a kind of freedom to say we aren't dependent on everything going our way for us to live courageous, meaningful lives,
Yeah.
or even happy lives, right? That we are not bound by our circumstances, as powerful as they are. That there is a driving energy of life. There's a life force within us that will find its expression, and part of our life's work is to answer that, to respond to that life force and live it.
And what I'm hearing from what you're saying also is that in addition to this bravery, albeit extraordinary or ordinary, that this happens on a soul level too. It
Mm.
doesn't happen just in the intellect. It happens
Mm-hmm.
in the heart and in the soul and within the spirit of each one of us, not even speaking from a religious perspective.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely that part of us that it's everything, right? It's the whole, as the Buddhists say, it's the whole catastrophe, right? Body,
Yes.
soul, emotions, right? I mean, it's all of it, right? We're not one thing or the other, right? We are embodied spirits with extraordinary capacity for imagination and for creativity, for grit,
Yeah.
for perseverance, to rise from disappointment, to rise from failure, even on some metaphysical level, as we live, to rise from death, to rise from the experiences that we would, by all accounts, describe as a death experience, and having life emerge from the ashes of whatever has befallen us. That is the miracle and the genius of the human species, and to be able to fully realize that, or even partially realize that in the course of our lives, is what makes this adventure, to use your word there, both universal and very particular, right? Because we get to live our lives, right? We get to not each other's lives, not vicarious lives, but the life that we alone can live.
I don't think I can say anything beyond what you've just said, because that
Oh,
was like put a fine point on it, you know?
no.
And
And it's for all of us.
there's no exclusion to this
There's
club.
no, it's not just for the select.
Yeah.
We can all do this, and we can all live lives of deep purpose and joy, with the raw materials that are given to us, and the ways that our creative energies and that mystical energy upon which we all depend, um, helps create a beautiful and courageous life.
And when we think about the fear that is
Mm,
pervasive and lives in society today, the
mhm.
antidote is what you describe, right? The
Yes,
antidote is rising above the fear with
right.
this bravery and courage and grit and grace in the toolbox to go
Hmm.
out and live this life.
Yeah. And one step at a time, right? They're all small steps. Every once in a while it feels like a huge leap, right? But it really is, um that most of these steps, most of these decisions, most of these moments are small. but they build upon one another, and they move us into places where and opportunities for the sort of um, like I said, those moments that we would hang our life story on, right? But those moments are no more significant than all the moments that preceded and followed. Those are just the ones where the energies coalesced to bring about that change, right?
Yeah.
And then we must live with the implications of that, right? Which is um, which is living according to the moments that we've been given, which I think is which requires as much courage as anything else, because the emotionality of the drama of those moments will fade, and even our confidence in them will eventually fade. And then we have the daily task of reminding ourselves, no, this is who I am. This is what my life. This is part of what I'm meant to do and to be, even when it doesn't feel like there's even when it feels like it's, we're just slogging through, like even those moments, and maybe especially so, are the stuff of bravery and the stuff of courage.
And the courage to just show up.
To show up. Right. To show up and to acknowledge, like, okay, I don't feel very loving today, but I have chosen to love. I have chosen to love these people. I have chosen to love this family. I have chosen to love this community. And I believe that that's what I'm here to do. Or, fill in the blank, right? If you are in the work of social change, most social change happens beneath the surface. And only rarely does it come to the kind of consciousness that, shifts an entire society. None of that happens without generations of people just putting one foot in front of the other toward a dream that's been placed in their hearts. So
continuing to show up. It's,
yay us, for the ones who do, just when we show up and when we offer what we can and allow ourselves the freedom to be imperfect and to be fully human, so that when things don't go according to some idealized script, we don't fall flat on our face or pick up our toys and go home, but continue on. And that's how we become sturdy in this life, and resilient in the path, and frankly trusting that there's more at play in the universe than what we can see or control. And I believe that.
I do too. Bishop Mariann Edgar Buddy, thank you so much for
thank you, Lisa,
giving us all a dose of soul food today. That's what I feel like I've received.
Bless you. I've as have I. It's just been wonderful speaking with you, Lisa, and I so admire your work and the goodness that you strive to put forth in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. The book we're speaking about is How We Learn to Be Brave, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. To learn more about Bishop Mariann Edgar Buddy, please visit edow.org. Under the About section, plug in Bishop Mariann. On Twitter, you can find her at Me Buddy, and that's Budde. On Facebook, Bishop Mariann Buddy, and on Instagram, Mariann Buddy. Come back and hang out again.
Okay.
Please.
Anytime. Thank you. Thank you very much. My best to all your listeners.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guest, Bishop Mariann Edgar Buddy, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another. Want to take a deeper dive into sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content, More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness, available exclusively on Medium and Substack. Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime, anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes from wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Harvesting Happiness and More Mental Fitness are produced by me, Lisa Cypers Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the awesome team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Guess, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio kbuuradiomalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.